the scratcher. Do not tolerate any job for any amount of time. Most good jobs require 4 to 6, even 8 years of college. These are the only jobs you should strive for. A career is the only way to go. Or maybe I'm writing this because I've been trapped in odd jobs my whole life. Anywhere else is a miserable depression of life. Jesus was a carpenter, which was a good profession to be in 2,000 years ago in Israel. The Son of God chose to be the lower middle class worker in between the poverty-stricken outcasts and the rich religious Pharisees. I would like to think if Jesus himself became a physician, then his life wouldn't have been so bad. But what the Bible says is that he gave up his authority and took a back-breaking menial woodsman job. I mean, most humans are in miserable, sorrowful jobs that only act as functions as to not to become homeless. 48% of all Americans over the age of 16 work in retail. But you got to think to yourself, which of these people were kids in kindergarten dreaming of one day working in retail, folding and selling and sewing clothes. Most people do these jobs because that's what their parents did. Why was Peter a fisherman? Probably because his father was. It's biology and it's generational. My whole life, while living with my parents, I heard my dad say on thousands of occasions that one day he was going to win the lottery and become a millionaire. He'd been playing the lotto for 35 years and he never won. He never won, not once, but still brings it up a lot and still has that dream inside of him one day winning. One day, Sean, one day. I work with two guys at the surgery center who were the same. They both buy a scratcher almost every day. He'd win $10 and $20 here and there. But what's the point of that? Isn't the point to force all red lights to turn green in your life and hit it big? All of us want to escape the horrors of capitalism, to stop being that working spoke in the great machine, to use up today and then throw away tomorrow. Let's say Peter bought a scratcher at the market, went to his boat. Before getting on the boat, he met Christ. Another hard morning lacking the fish. Peter's new friend suggests that he points to cast his net, quote unquote, over there. So Peter takes the scratcher and gets on the boat, then sails out to the spot where Christ pointed. He drops the net and something miraculous happens. He runs a knife against the scratcher and he wins big. So big that he'll never have to work a day in his life ever again. Though Jesus fills the net with fish supernaturally, Peter doesn't see what happens. He pulls the boat up to the dock with his future in his hand. Christ says, I know that you know how to lay down your net to catch the fish, but I'll teach you how to catch men. Peter is ecstatic that all of his life's problems are now solved because he won big. Thanks, but no thanks. I got to go cash this thing in. Peter yells to Jesus in excitement. 3 years down the line, he still has a load of money in his bank account. But he is now a man broken upon the rock of excess. He has everything he could ever have wanted and needed, but he's trapped in a continuous state of depression. A dollar is water that doesn't move. Maybe I needed to hear that myself. Money is just a noun. It just does things for you. Money doesn't really have any spiritual value. The preacher had everything, and then again, he had nothing. So then I ask myself, should I still not tolerate any odd job for any amount of time? Or is it that me working the graveyard shift in an old folks' home, that's just not for people like me with my biology and my personality traits? Are careers the only thing you should strive for? You can, but this isn't necessary. Your calling would be more like it. Now, let's say that you did hit big and won all the money in the world, but had no adventure due to your calling or without a calling. I think when you're in a bout of depression, or what we call the valley period, quote unquote, you're more likely to hear the voice of God in a moment of your desperation. There is a lot to be said about the Son of God taking a middle class job as a carpenter, because if you really sit and think about it, making the most amount of money possible with your 8-year college degree isn't the point of life. Also, someone like my dad having that false hope stored in his brain to hit it big one day also is not the point. Both are false hopes, and both ultimately are idols. I mean, even with someone living in a third world country hoping to get out of their and their family's sad situation can also be an idol of thought. It can be quite an idol of thought. They got the chance to dream, can't they? The Enlightenment thinking Steven Pinker wrote a book using statistics that reads as most humans by 2030 will have been lifted out of atomic poverty. That is a really great thing and a wonderful thing. But though this is great and wonderful, would you be able to say that this equates to a $1 million scratcher? In a morbid sense, of course. What if Steven Pinker offered a better financial hope to Peter, and Peter himself became an Enlightenment thinker? But then as he walks with that philosophy, he shakes off his friend Christ and his teachings, and then he misses his destiny. Just to be clear, I believe that everything is predestined and predetermined. But let's just say, for the sake of this short story, that Peter missed his destiny. In real life, Peter is driving on the road, and he stops at a red light, and Christ is standing in the middle of the sidewalk in front of Peter's car. So if you think about it, due to being a fisherman and being in a lower middle class bracket with his job, he had learned humility. Peter had that deep inside of his soul. Jesus then said again, "I'll teach you to be fishers of men." What happens is, back at the scene off of the boat, without the scratcher, Peter falls to his knees in veneration and a realization and says, "I know who you are, Jesus." Peter quits his job and follows his new best friend, which starts the adventure of his calling. When things get put into perspective and you put Christ at that number one spot in your life, which is what I'm doing as I'm writing this now, I now realize that I should quit my job and just go get a day job instead. Stop putting so much of an emphasis on this graveyard shift, Sean, that I've been working. An idol could also be your expectations of a better future. Change things around if need be and turn the machine off with the key when you see Christ in the middle of your street. Get out of your car and go learn to be a fisher of men. Now, that's the point. Once you take a step back, stop realizing it's all red lights for no reason or yellow lights. You got to quickly drive through. Breathe for a minute, then pray. Once you do these things, then everything will fall into perspective. Tell Jesus you drive and mean it. Take a break for today and do what I do after the first things. Put on an episode of Joe Rogan because in this interview, Matthew McConaughey is talking about how it's all green lights.